Desert power comes from Italy.
Yes. Desert power comes from Italy.
Hello and welcome to Baggage Claim, the unofficial Jet Lag the Game companion podcast. We're here today to unpack Season 13, Schengen Showdown, Episode 1. I'm Jaya.
I'm Casey. And I'm Kira.
Casey, what was the most recent Schengen Zone country you claimed?
I think it would be Germany. I flew to Scotland in September, and they, for some reason, made me fly through Germany. So I didn't leave the airport, but I did pass through.
Kira, what about you? What was your most recent Schengen Zone country? And did you take any fun public transport?
I think it was France. About a year and a half ago, I visited some friends who were studying abroad in Paris. I was there during one of the many, many metro strikes. So just constant strikes happening.
What about you, Jaya?
Mine would also be Germany. I was there for, second time ever for a conference in November. And I got to take the Deutsche Bahned. And
Ooh.
I'm not going to lie, loved it. That might just be my American sensibilities, because every time I mentioned to somebody, like, I'm loving these little trains, they were like, ugh, these little trains.
Well, we will get into the Deutsche Bahn. I think the Deutsche Bahn treated you the way you deserve to be treated, which was flawlessly.
Thank you. I would like to get us started by quickly summarizing the episode, just in case it's been a minute since you watched it, or if you are like me and your memory is somehow simultaneously a steel trap and a slotted spoon. So this game that we're playing here is a country claiming game, just like Battle for America was, except that this time it's the Schengen Zone. You claim a country just by entering it, you lock it by doing a challenge. Sam is back with the sweatshirt that has me seething with envy.
So true.
Ben is back at it again with his cunty little outfits and pants that look like they belong in a candy store. And the two teams have completely different opening moves. Badam claims Switzerland, Tam claims France, and the two teams realize that they're racing for Germany almost immediately. But the strategy here is not important. What's important here is that Adam soon declares it's bundling up time, but then doesn't put 12 shirts on again, which I dare say is slacker behavior. Ben says hi to a pigeon in a store in Schengen, which is quickly followed by Sam and Tom telling the pigeons in Belgium to fuck off, and neither pigeons respond to either team, because clearly they only speak German. And finally, Tom and Sam block Belgium, and Badam block Germany, after some pretty stressful sequences. This episode was all about blaming your bad luck on Deutsche Bahn instead of yourself, and I'm all for it. So to conclude our summary, I've come up with a title to highlight what I think was the most important moment of the episode. This week, I noticed Tom stopping himself from making a couple not-too-family-friendly statements, and I would therefore like to propose a title in the style of a Percy Jackson chapter title. Tom Scott Gets Censored. What do you think, Casey and Kira?
I love that.
That's pretty good.
Do you have any alternate titles you'd like to propose, or are we rolling with Tom Scott Gets Censored?
I mean, I think that's a really good title. I also had an idea for a title inspired by something that Tom Scott said, which is The Gaping Abyss of Being Known. That is pretty good.
That's really good. Casey, I kind of love that.
I love all the Tom Scott-isms in this episode.
Well, with that, I would like to move us into our first segment. This one's going to be all about the strategy. So, Casey, I'll give it to you.
Thanks, Jaya. Let's get into the Strat Chat, which is our segment where we break down the strategy and gameplay of the episode. This is the first episode of the season. It was an awesome first episode, and there's so much to talk about, especially around the opening moves of both teams. So helpfully, before we move into the opening, Ben and Adam lay out the 3 potential opening moves in this very episode. Those are taking the Eurostar to France, Belgium, the Netherlands, and Germany, flying to Vienna to get Austria, the Czech Republic, Slovakia, and Hungary, and the secret third option of flying to Zurich to get Switzerland, Austria, Liechtenstein, and to beat the Eurostar to Germany.
I love that there was a secret third thing.
I mean...
And of course they're going to do the secret third option.
Exactly. In the opening moves, Sam and Tom take the Eurostar, which is the most obvious route to both teams, and Ben and Adam correctly predict this and take the secret third option. Something that I think is really interesting about these opening moves is that we see Ben and Adam going for an unusual approach based on what they expect Team Sam and Tom to do, which is almost the opposite of what we've seen in most other seasons, where Team Sam tends to go the high-risk, high-reward route. What do you both think of the opening moves?
Well, I really agree with what you're saying, and I think it's interesting how much predictability is playing a role into this first decision. And something that is making me think about is, I feel like the two sort of styles of games that I think about in terms of strategy, there's the tag style game in my head, and then there's the Battle for America side in my head, where with tag, being unpredictable is really an asset, where if you don't know where you're going, then your opponents don't know where you're going. And that's really the strategy, is just to be unpredictable. Whereas with something like Battle for America, sometimes a team would make an unexpected move, but it didn't really play that much into the strategy. Predictability wasn't playing a strategic role. And so it's interesting that even though the style of gameplay here is more similar to Battle for America, it seems like they're really prioritizing unexpectedness, but I did think that was interesting.
And I think that's based on kind of two components of the strategy, which is, first of all, both teams have trackers on the other, which is not something we've seen in previous
that's a good point.
Region claiming games, where it's almost a surprise what region the other team is claiming. Like, you don't find that out until they've already claimed it. I think because of that, the unpredictability is not a surprise factor as much as it is like trying to think 3 steps ahead. It's not a surprise that one team is in the country, like you see them in that country, but it might be a surprise what the route out of that country into the next country is, and especially whether or not they're going to attempt the challenge to lock that country, I think is also really interesting in terms of kind of being up in the air, ambiguous, more so than where they actually are.
Yeah, I think this also might come into play quite a bit in the future with their challenges. If one of the teams ends up in, let's say, Germany, because we've seen Germany now, it's sort of to their benefit, but also can be to their detriment if they don't know whether or not the other team is going to try and do the challenge.
Exactly.
Because even if they've gotten it, they don't know if they have to be stressed while doing the challenge. Are they running, or are they like not under any danger? And I think we saw that a little bit with Sam and Tom just deciding, we're going to see if they fail Germany and just go lock Belgium while we're at it. Because that sort of dead time isn't there.
Yes. And I think that transitions really well into the next question that I want to pose to you both. So while Ben and Adam are on their flight, Sam and Tom quickly claim France by taking the train through it, and then they disembark in Belgium to attempt the challenge. And when I first saw the trailer for this season and started to learn about the game mechanic of auto-claiming a country versus locking it by succeeding at a challenge, my immediate reaction was that, to me, it seemed like the smart move would be to obviously lock every country that you claim so that it can't be stolen from you. We've seen in previous region claiming games that when the other team steals a region from you, that's like they're gaining 2 points, right? Because they're taking one away and adding one to their tally. So it seemed like passing through and leaving that country open to being stolen by the other team was a massive risk. But after seeing this first episode, I think that I had the strategy kind of reversed, because what I'd fail to consider is how time-consuming it is to force the other team to travel all of the way to a country that your team had already claimed, to take the time to attempt the challenge and still risk failing the challenge. Like, that just seems like a massive waste of time when the other team can be continuing through multiple other countries and claiming them. Jaya and Kira, do you think that the strategy of auto-claiming a country is better than trying to immediately attempt that challenge and lock it? Am I missing something here?
I feel like it's sort of going to depend on how easy it is to get to each country. Let's take Iceland. Iceland is so far out of the way. If you go to Iceland, odds are you're probably going to be the only team going to Iceland. I think it's not that risky just to leave it unlocked. But then versus a country like Germany, where it's pretty central, they're probably going to be going through it a good number of times, they should get that locked down.
I hadn't thought about the travel hub question, but that's something that we even see in this episode, where after Germany is locked, Sam and Tom still want to get to Germany in order to have a better starting point for the next day to travel elsewhere.
Exactly, yeah.
That's a really good point. I think another part that I was thinking about in terms of the strategy with the challenges is the fact that obviously this is the first season where Sam, Adam, and Ben aren't the people writing the challenges, and so it means we might be getting slightly different style of challenges because of course Amy is writing these challenges. And specifically something that I'm curious about that I would love to get your opinions on, Jaya and Casey, is whether you think that means that there's going to be more opportunity for kind of finding loopholes, or whether you think that that means that the actual players of the game are going to be maybe less able to think of loopholes, or maybe the challenges will be written in a more specific way. So for instance, the Belgium, the waffle pong challenge, there were examples written on the card, tossable items like peas, think M&Ms.
Well, I think we see in this episode that there is definitely room for interpretation, and a highlight for me of this episode was seeing Tom and Sam build the little waffle funnel to optimize their chances at landing the waffle pong.
I loved that.
It felt very like classic Taskmaster workaround. And I love seeing those creative thinking moments. So I'm really hoping that the mystery of the challenges this season will allow for some of that interpretive thinking. But at the same time, I do feel like it is much more of an unknown. I think in previous seasons we've seen, even if they're drawing a challenge from a deck of cards, they might pull the card that they're hoping not to get, but they know that that's a possibility. They just know that they're in a really bad spot for it. Whereas here, I think they don't have a good idea of where the best location would be in the country to attempt a challenge, what they'll need. So I do hope that we see some of those workarounds, because I personally think that's really fun. And I think that that is like a really cool opportunity to make sure that they have a better chance at succeeding.
I feel like there will probably be a little bit of both, where I think a lot of the like weird little shenanigans that maybe they pulled in previous seasons to complete a challenge were often because they were still within the spirit of the challenge, and they knew what the spirit of the challenge was because they wrote them. Versus here, I think they might at least start the challenges doing it very rules as written, because I think Amy's done a really good job of like laying out exactly what the rules for the challenge are. She's made them very clear. But then it means that they're just going to start doing it the straightforward way. And maybe eventually, I think especially in the challenges that aren't time limited, they're going to come up with something weird in the middle.
Which I will say, not to backseat drive, but my beef with the waffle pong challenge is I think they should have gone for sprinkles. I feel like that would have been so much easier.
Sprinkles would be
so
really
smart.
I just feel like that would have been...
But they wouldn't have gotten as many sprinkles in one package of sprinkles as they did in that big thing.
There have to be hundreds of sprinkles in a box.
But they were only allowed to use one package of things. So if you throw like a pinch of sprinkles, I think they're more likely to scatter.
I don't know. I guess there's still the question of throwing them that far.
Well, but my personal take, and again, I know this is backseat driving. I know we have the luxury of watching the show and getting to think on it. I sort of feel like you could have dropped it. How far was it?
2 meters.
2 meters. Right? I feel like you could have dropped the objects 2 meters vertically.
That's crazy.
Where if you're standing story above, or if you're, somehow able to get 6 feet up and you're just pouring.
You're just pouring the sprinkles.
But then maybe that's not the spirit of the game. And so that's sort of where it gets tricky, where it's like if you write your own challenge, you know what the spirit of the game is. You know what sort of workarounds you're willing to have.
I think that is the spirit of the game, and I want to see that.
I think had they maybe gotten halfway through the challenge and been like, oh my god, we're so fucked, it's so over, then that would have made sense. But because they had already like gotten one candy in, they knew it was possible. I think it was nice to continue.
I could truly keep unpacking the strategy of this season for hours, but instead I'm going to wrap up and hand things off to Kira for our next segment.
It's time to move into a segment we like to call the Detour. Jet lag is all about weighing risk and reward, making the best possible decision in the moment, and then seeing how it plays out. Sometimes there's not enough time to fully think things through, or more information comes up later that changes the mental calculus. And unlike the jet lag boys, we have the luxury of being able to think these things through. So I'm going to propose some alternate paths that the teams could have taken, some detours, if you will, and I want to hear your thoughts on what might have happened. And so for today, all of these what ifs are going to be specifically about the race for Germany. The first detour that I want to present to you is, what if Sam and Tom took the gamble to get all the way into Germany? So let's say they saw Ben and Adam were taking their sneaky train through the German border, and so Team Badham still would have claimed Germany first. But in this scenario, let's say Sam and Tom decided that they're still going to try their luck on their Germany challenge. They're still going to make their way all the way into Aachen. What do you guys think, Jaya and Casey?
I think they really could have beat Ben and Adam on that challenge, because they were going to end up in a place with a pastry named after it, which, I gotta say, it's like bread and a pickle. Love it. But they would have ended up in a place with a pastry named after it in Aachen. And so they could have claimed that easily, versus Ben and Adam. They did a bunch of research figuring out what was like there, what regions they were in, where they could get to, because they were in kind of remote-ass southern, southwestern Germany. And I honestly think in the time that it took them to decide and then go to the Black Forest region, Sam and Tom really could have gotten Germany. So I think that would have been pretty great for them, but I like how it happened this way.
I also wonder, though, if they would have run into the same issue of bakeries being closed, or, you know, just because there is a pastry from that region named after it, that doesn't mean that it's a popular one. It doesn't mean that it's like in every grocery store. And so I do think that it would have been very close. And I don't think that either team would have known how close it was until they opened the challenge envelope.
What I'm curious about is, let's say Team Sam and Tom, they did claim Germany. What next? Like, would they have gone back to then try to do the Netherlands challenge?
Because they already would have claimed the Netherlands, right?
Because I think at the beginning of the day, Tom was talking about how they wanted 3 general countries. They passed through France, obviously. And then he was talking about how they wanted Germany, the Netherlands, and Belgium. And he was saying that they probably would only be able to lock 2 of the 3. And so they had already locked Belgium. And then let's say they were able to get into Germany and lock Germany. I'm not sure whether it would have been better for them to go back into the Netherlands to try to claim the Netherlands, or maybe it would have been better to go for Luxembourg and just try to rack up more countries.
This is just like my gut instinct. It feels to me like it is always a better choice to go to a new country than to go back to a country you were already in and try to claim it. But I guess it does depend on how close you are to that country. Like, it could just be like crossing the border again. But just because, again, there's that time sink of you could go back, attempt the challenge, and still fail, versus if you're already in the country, that feels like a little bit less of a time sink, right? Because you're already there. And so to me, my impulse is to say that they maybe would have gone to a new country and maybe even attempted the challenge there.
That's
versus going back. But I don't know. I think that my prediction is that we will see that locking certain countries is more valuable than locking others. So I don't think that all countries are equally, well, like in the world, I mean, in the game. In the game, I'm just gonna stop talking.
Yeah, I think it would have been really fun if they had gone to Luxembourg, because, I mean, it's going to be kind of hard to get to Luxembourg if you're not already planning to go for it, and you're not going to plan to go for it if it doesn't have other countries around it that you also want to get. So I would have loved to see them try and just grab Luxembourg. But I think I'm a little biased because I just think the little countries are fun.
I agree, and I hope we get to see more of the microstates. But so then on the Ben and Adam side of things, I'm curious what their best strategy might have been. So if Sam and Tom make it into Germany, they get the pastry in Aachen, Ben and Adam are also in Germany, but they didn't lock it. And so then they no longer have Germany. Their only country on the map at this point is Switzerland. What do you guys think their best strategy would have been from there?
They're already super close to France. I would have loved to see them kind of steal France.
They were. I mean, and I think that was the initial strategy when they thought that they had a lot of time to scoop Germany. And I do think that France is going to be another one of those countries that is more valuable to steal because of the travel hubs of, like, even just Paris has a lot of pathways out of there to other countries.
Yeah, which is interesting because we were just talking about how it seems like the best strategy would be to claim more countries rather than to try to scoop. But then here, maybe because France is so much of a travel hub, and also because it would be the 2-point scoop, and so maybe then...
I also think it's just because it's really nearby already. Like, I think going back to steal countries is harder to justify or harder to figure out when you don't have any of the countries around it to also claim. But if they're already right there, and they need to figure out something to do, I mean... what's so bad about just running into France and seeing what the challenge is?
That's a good point, Jaya. The travel time aspect, I think, is going to be really key. So I'm going to transition us into our second detour, which is still about the race for Germany. But in this case, what if Ben and Adam hadn't gotten the Germany challenge in time? So let's say in this situation, Sam and Tom still, they didn't go to Germany. They're in the Netherlands. They still failed the flower challenge. But in this case... Badam, they got into the Black Forest region, they're running around, maybe they couldn't find an ATM, maybe they couldn't make it back into the Black Forest region, and they weren't able to complete the challenge, and so they didn't lock in Germany. Do you think that would have changed either team's plans?
I absolutely think so. I think that what we see in Sam and Tom failing the Netherlands challenge is that Ben and Adam seemed pretty excited to attempt that challenge, but not immediately. Like, they were like, I think the Netherlands is still going to be in play. We can come back later. But Germany, Sam and Tom were still going to go to Germany to travel out of Germany the next day. And I think that they even said in this episode, the only reason that they would not attempt the Netherlands challenge is if Ben and Adam failed. And so I think that the timing specifically is a little bit nitty gritty. But I think that absolutely Sam and Tom would continue on to Germany and make sure to attempt that challenge before leaving.
What do you think, Jaya?
Yeah, I completely agree. I think Casey's completely right here. Like, they're gonna be going to Germany anyways, or at least as we see at the end of the episode, they're gonna try and go to Germany anyways. And so I think knowing that Ben and Adam had failed that challenge, they wouldn't go to Germany immediately. They wouldn't, like, make a run for it in the same way that they were talking about doing earlier. But they would still end up in Germany, and so ultimately I think they would probably be able to lock it down.
On that note, thinking through possible predictions, Jaya, I'll pass it over to you.
So for my segment, this was the first episode of a season.
Woohoo!
So I want to make sure we can all put some really specific predictions into the universe for our hopes and dreams about this. And if any one of us gets something right here, like, I will Venmo you $5. This will be so impressive.
Ooh.
So in this episode, they're using being Deutsche Bahned as a way to describe being delayed because you're taking a German train, regardless of if you're in Germany. How far away from Germany is one of the teams going to get Deutsche Bahned? And what's the funniest possible way that you think it might happen?
So my thought on this is not actually a German train. It is, however, the spirit of the Deutsche Bahn. My extremely specific prediction is that one team is going to try to get to Malta, and they're going to be waiting on a ferry from Italy to Malta, and something crazy is going to happen to the ferry, and it's going to be some genius idea where they're going to be like, oh, no one's going to think that we're going to Malta today, and it's going to be so smart, and the ferry is going to make a U-turn somewhere really chaotic, and it's going to be a huge delay, and it's going to feel as if they had gotten Deutsche Bahned.
I hope they take a ferry.
Well, that actually, I think that would be closer to being Trenitaliad, because the ferry is coming from Italy. But speaking of Italy, we've had almost no talk of Italy so far. Despite it being potentially kind of powerful because of the microstates, it has two of them just slapped right inside of it. So why are they avoiding Italy?
They hate Italians.
Love that, Casey.
I think you got it.
They hate them. You said specific predictions. I think they're going to all come out as Italian haters.
Casey, I love this prediction. Mine is actually that they're afraid of the sheer raw power that Ben Doyle in a turtleneck and Adam, I will pronounce this place with an Italian accent, or so help me God, Chase will get there. I think Sam and Tom are going to do everything they can to stop Adam from getting Italy.
Whoa.
That's a great prediction.
I do think Ben and Adam kind of take on the desert power in Italy. Now that you've said that.
Exactly.
That's a great
We
point.
saw that in tag. Desert power comes from Italy.
Yes.
Desert power comes from Italy. Desert power comes from Italy, just like Timothée Chalamet would have wanted.
Precisely.
Classic,
Italian.
iconic, famous Italian Timothée Chalamet.
Well, speaking of the Italian microstates then, in this game, I'm seeing 5 clear oddball countries. We got the 4 microstates, and then we got Iceland. I can therefore only assume that they're going to have some kind of weird challenges. Now, as a reminder to you guys, because I had to look them up, these microstates are 1. Andorra. It's between Spain and France, and a trend with the microstates is that they're all really old and have something to do with the fall of the Roman Empire, and this is no exception, because Andorra is from 1200-ish, and it pre-existed all the surrounding countries. We have San Marino, which is the one in the European mountains in northeast Italy. It's the oldest European republic, and again, they're just like that because they always have been. They were there before Italy existed, so they stayed. Third, we have Monaco. It's at the bottom of France near Italy, which is one of the wealthiest and most expensive places in the world. It's a constitutional monarchy, again, really old, and it was run by the Grimaldi family for hundreds of years, so think Princess Diaries type country. And fourth, we have Vatican City, and that's the Catholic ones in Rome. Our final oddball country that I mentioned here is Iceland, just because it's so far away. But Iceland is Nordic, polar, and talked about a lot recently with its volcanoes. I would like each of us to make a prediction about what's going to happen with any one of these states. It can be a challenge of what'll happen there, or no, it can be about a challenge that will happen there. Which team will claim one, who will anger all the residents in one of them, or something else. And I can get us started here. I think they're gonna go to Vatican City, and regardless of what the challenge is, somebody's going to anger a bishop.
I mean, I'm going to tell you what the challenge is in Vatican City. They're going to have to elect a new pope.
Casey, I love that.
They're gonna do a conclave in that joint. They're gonna conclave it up. I love that movie.
The challenge is to say we're gonna conclave, and then they conk all over their clave.
They're literally conking up in that clave.
Kira, you got anything?
I think that someone is going to go to Iceland at the very end, and it's not really going to have an impact. I think it's going to be like a reverse situation of Alaska in Battle for America, where I think that people are going to think that it's really powerful, and whatever team, I'm going to say Team Badham. I'm going to say Team Badham is going to go to Iceland to try to harken back to Battle for America, and I think it's not going to work.
I do have another prediction, but first I need to clarify, because I don't, despite being Team Sam, I know nothing about F1. Is there something in Monaco? Is there some sort of race?
Yes.
Okay.
There is the Monaco like Grand Prix is in Monaco. F1 Big Race Monaco.
My prediction is that once again we will see like some sort of F1 related site, and once again it will be Ben and Adam there, who literally could not care less.
That's a great prediction.
That's my prediction.
Yeah, like I would love to see Ben and Adam go to a race course, build a little car, drive around that little car. I hope that that's what the challenge is. We've seen it in a couple of previous seasons, and God, I hope Sam is jealous. Which person is going to say something extraordinarily cancelable, whether it's accidentally or on purpose, first?
Ben.
I also think it's Ben, and I think it's going to be... my prediction is that he's going to mistake two countries' names for each other in an extremely cancelable way.
I love that idea. Here's my off-the-wall prediction, is that it's going to be Brian, who is known for saying some pretty cancelable things in Battle for America because they were funny. And I think he's going to spawn in to yell at them for removing Ireland, and that's when he's going to say something. It will be on purpose, and it will be funny.
That's very funny, actually. I would love that.
So real.
And I would like to bring us into our conclusion, which we're going to use a framework from, what, middle school? High school? The rosebud thorn. So we've each brought a rose, a thorn, and a bud to share with each other today. And let's start with all of our roses. Casey, how about you go first? What was your rose?
I have so many roses. I have a bouquet of roses for this episode because I think this was, dare I say, one of the best episode ones in Jetlag. I absolutely love Tom Scott's energy that he brings. He is so intense and excited right from the beginning, and I think that is great. I especially loved the moment where Tom gave a fan the bouquet of flowers after they failed the bouquet challenge. I thought that was very sweet. And I think the music in this season absolutely slays. Like, the region claiming music is such a bop, and that is so much fun. I'm really enjoying it.
Yeah, I love it. Kira, what's your rose?
I also loved this episode. I thought that this was one of the strongest episodes maybe ever in the history of jet lag. I picked the moment where Team Badham was trying to think of different ways that they could find Black Forest food, and I picked the moment that Adam found the butcher shop and really sadly but really excitedly said, "We could get Black Forest ham." That's my rose. I thought it was really funny. It was like a great moment of hope amidst adversity.
The way he says it too. Black Forest ham? Could we get Black Forest ham?
I just thought it was a great moment.
I don't know what happened when I was writing down my rose, thorn, and bud, but as I was rewatching this episode on a train yesterday, I just like blacked out, scrolled down, typed a Ben Doyle quote into my rose category, and then left. But the rose that I decided on was when Ben and Adam were at the airport, and Ben goes, "The freaking travelator's broken, but we got 2 travelators extending from our torsos."
Which is literally
about his
so
legs
true.
and the people movers.
So true.
It's a great point.
I'm always saying that.
It really, really got to me.
It's a great moment.
Now for our thorns, my thorn is not the music. I absolutely adore the music they chose for this season. But my thorn is that the music got me listening to Blue Dabba Dee on loop again. And while it's a banger, this hasn't happened to me since like 2017, and I'm a little mad about it.
Wait, Jaya, what is Blue Dabba Dee?
I'm blue dabba dee dabba da dabba dee dabba da dabba dee dabba. Have you not heard that?
Oh, I do
This
know.
is a mystery to me.
I wouldn't
Did
have
you
known
live
it.
inside a rock?
I know.
I lived inside a rock.
I wouldn't have known the tune. Well, no, I wouldn't have known the name, but I do know that tune.
I'm just gonna believe you on that one.
Kira, how about you? What was your thorn?
My thorn, not their fault, but my thorn is Sam and Tom failing the flower challenge. And specifically, I feel like they did everything right. And so it bums me out that it wasn't a strategic blunder. There was nothing, well, maybe they could have gone to a different place. But for the most part, they really played everything well.
My thorn is that although Ben and Adam did successfully eat the Black Forest cake in the Black Forest region, they successfully locked Germany. The stress that I personally underwent watching them try to take out cash and then run back, buy the Black Forest cake, and run into the Black Forest region truly took years off of my life. I'm so glad that they succeeded, but I was sweating. I have some new gray hairs that did not exist before. It was so stressful.
God, right? That was incredibly stressful. But now, let's end on a good note. What's our buds? I can get us started. I am really hoping there's a mechanic like the area bonus in Battle for America, or at least something that sort of incentivizes going out of the way if it means you're going to get a country that's good for whatever this bonus is. Casey, what about you?
I personally am super excited to see the outcome of whether Ben and Adam take the bait and head to the Netherlands to attempt the challenge, and I'm curious if they end up in a different size city, if they'll actually be able to succeed and lock Netherlands for their team.
No, absolutely. Kira, how about you? What's your bud?
My bud is that there was so much scooping in this episode, and so I feel like this is going to be a really exciting season. When I first watched the trailer and learned about the mechanics, I was sort of thinking that maybe the strategy would just be to go to totally different sides of Europe and sort of make your way into the middle, because then you can just claim lots of countries. But it seems like already at the start, so much scooping and re-scooping and threats of scooping is going on, and I feel like that bodes well for a really exciting season.
And with that, thank you all for waiting at Baggage Claim. Please let us know your thoughts on socials. We're at Baggage Claim Pod, or our email is in the episode description. And we will see you all next week at the baggage claim at the end of the building. You'll know you've made it to the right one when you see the flock of doves that roamed free in the cargo hold. The end.
Goodbye.
Goodbye!
So we're gonna start with each of us. What? Sorry, Macklemore started playing in my head. The spirit of Macklemore took over.